Greetings from London. This is Mariam Sharif and welcome to Star Moguls podcast. This week, I have such an inspirational guest for you. Her name is Dr. Gurpreet Kaur. She is a global women's rights expert, a PhD in gender and postcolonial ecofeminism in literature. She is currently working in climate justice and gave a wonderful talk about endometriosis. So I'd love to introduce you to Gurpreet. Welcome, Gurpreet.
Thank you so much, Mariam. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
So I'd like to tell the audience that you were in a wheelchair for 5 years. And the reason was endometriosis. I have suffered from endometriosis, so I felt your pain, but I didn't know anybody could be bound to a wheelchair. And for such a long time, that must have been absolutely debilitating. How did you get to that stage?
Those who don't know what endometriosis is, endometriosis, in a very scientific definition, is when the lining of the uterus grows outside of the uterus. So it can embed itself on mainly pelvic organs. So it can be your abdominal wall, your bladder, your ovaries, the urethra. But it can also be found in other, spots in the body because it travels, through the bloodstream and embeds itself. So there have been reports where patients have complained that they were diagnosed and found endometriosis on their lungs, in other various parts of the body. And the problem is that because it's a women's reproductive health issue, and women's reproductive health issues historically have come with a lot of baggage. People don't like talking about it, right? The uterus, blood, pain, periods, nobody likes it. And particularly in our, cultures, in brown cultures, South Asian cultures, this gets very, very complicated with cultural but religious baggage also. So this is a major taboo where it is normalized for women to suffer. And that suffering is, when you complain, you are told off and dismissed. You are called hysterical. You are called being difficult. You are called, oh, she just doesn't want to do the work. She doesn't want to get on with life. You're told being lazy, right? And this is not just a sort of like a cultural phenomenon. This finds itself embedded even in the medical discourse. And endometriosis causes a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And it is that pain which is so debilitating that, I was doubled over and I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything. And I was on that wheelchair because of that extreme, excruciating pain that defies language.
So I want to read some facts that I found on the endometriosis facts and figures uk.org. And it says 1 out of 10 women are sufferers of endometriosis. 10% of women worldwide have endometriosis. That's 176 million worldwide. The fact that it is 8.2 million a year in treatment, that's a big amount.
Huge, Miriam. Actually, I'll correct the figures. As of 2023, WHO has said it's 190 million. 190 million are only those that are known and recorded. If you go to countries like the Global South, where such diagnosis might not be available to people who live in rural areas or don't have access to hospitals, in reality, that means that we are looking at numbers that surpass and are way more than 190 million. This is actually then more common than diabetes. This is more common than asthma. And yet people don't know what it is. Men and women of certain ages have never heard of it. And if you tell them, oh, I have endometriosis, they're like, endo what? And they don't know. Nobody knows not just the terminology of it, but how badly women suffer from it. And they don't know. Nobody knows not just the terminology of it, but how badly women suffer from it.
I remember being diagnosed with it at a young age, and then having excruciating periods, and then just living with it. And my period used to come and I would miss the first day of college, then university, and everybody knew, oh, she's not in college because she's got her period.
Mm.
And it was that bad, and they just accepted it. And recently did an interview with Dr. Nigat Arif, and she said to me, do you know that periods aren't meant to hurt? And I was like, I never knew that. I just thought we just had to suffer. I thought we just had to suffer and get on with it, you know? And when she told me that, and I was like, I got to do a lot of relearning. I've got to re-educate myself, because what have I been doing with myself? Because we've just been told to bear the pain, get on with it, and don't say anything. This is just the way it is. Until you actually have now people having open discussions about actually that this is not normal, and you should get treatment, and you should get it diagnosed, or whatever diagnosis it is. And when did the endometriosis start for you?
I was formally diagnosed when I was 19.
Oh, right.
So, just like you, I used to miss, days in school every month. And because it used to be so painful. And I was an undergrad in Singapore at that time at the National University of Singapore, and I fainted
Right.
in the lecture theatre because of the pain. A friend had the presence of mind to call my mum, and she came. My dad also came, and I was chartered to the hospital, where they were like, "Oh dear, this kind of pain is not normal. We don't know what's going on." And I was, scheduled. They did the blood tests, etc., and they're like, "I think we have to go in and see what's happening." And it was only when they went in, with they did a laparoscopic surgery, that they found that I have an endometrial cyst on my ovary, which was causing the pain. It had kind of like burst. It's called a chocolate cyst because it looks like molten chocolate, and it had kind of burst, and that was causing the excruciating pain that was happening, and that was my formal diagnosis. But before that, like I said, I was missing days from school, and like you said, this pain is normalized, right?
Normalized,
Period
absolutely. Absolutely.
Periods are painful. You do get cramps, but this level of pain is not normal. The
Yeah.
level of pain where you are, kind of bending over, you can't
Bending over,
walk, and you're on.
crying, right?
Yes,
Gurpreet, I
yes,
cried with my endometriosis. Like, I needed
yes,
to hold my stomach,
yes,
my back was hurting, and
yes.
literally excruciating tears would roll down
Tears,
my
yes.
face.
And
Yeah,
that level of pain has been normalized not just by our families or cultures, but also by doctors,
mm,
where this kind of a thing is like, oh, it's just period pain, get over it. Oh,
yeah,
you're being hysterical, you're demanding attention, get over it.
yeah.
No, sorry, it's not normal. And
Mm,
this is what we need to talk about, because particularly in brown cultures, this is
mm,
such a taboo topic that girls, especially when they get periods and they're painful,
yeah,
they have nowhere to turn to. They don't know who to talk to.
yeah.
A lot of them go up to their mothers and they're like, "Oh, shame, shame, don't talk about it."
So what does global women's right expert mean, and what do you do?
I was a feminist right from young, and my whole journey, has been about gender, women's rights, LGBTQI rights, as a gender specialist. And I came to the UK in 2011 to do my PhD in
Right.
a field called ecofeminism, which
Yes.
basically talks about the connections between women and climate and the environment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and how women are impacted, disproportionately impacted by climate change, how race fits into this, how their sexual reproductive health systems are disproportionately affected by some of the environmental and climate changes that we go through, and how are women talking about these things through narratives, so through literature, because the way this field has been conceptualized is that, oh, only if we have science and data is what
Yes.
is, credible. But you
Mm.
are not hearing a lot of stories from science and data because women, are not represented accurately in these numbers. And what
Yeah.
they do is there's a lot of stories and narratives that actually encompass what they're going through, and they talk about the experiences, and that was what I was looking at as
Yes.
as a former academic. And it was halfway through my PhD that I had this flare up of endometriosis that ended me, that put me on that wheelchair. It was in 2013.
When you had the episode when it was so so painful, I guess, what happened at that instant that you what did you collapse? Did you?
It manifested in a very atypical way. And the more I talk about it, the more I realize actually it's not atypical. A lot of women actually, say it manifested with extreme lower back pain.
Okay.
And it's lower back because it's technically the back of your pelvis that meets, your lower back. So it's
Yeah.
still pelvis, but back of your pelvis.
Mm.
And I could not stand up straight. I was
Okay.
in so much pain.
Yeah.
And because it was such an atypical representation, everyone around me just kept saying, oh, you probably have a back sprain. You probably
Yeah.
sprained yourself. Nothing, don't worry, keep walking, keep doing this. And the more I walked and the more I actually tried to do physical activity, the worse it became.
Right.
And it wasn't until I literally, yeah, I fainted out of pain. I just couldn't move,
Okay. Right.
and I was just incapacitated by that pain.
Yes.
And then that was when a whole series of, I think this is a manifestation of endometriosis. We got doctors on board,
So
pain
you
management.
decided that you would go back
Yes, I
because
had
that,
to, because
yeah, for
my
treatment or
treatment, insurance was there, family was there.
right.
And that was the start of the point of no return. Uh, I can't tell you what those days were like. Um, Being on a wheelchair, from being a completely independent woman to then kind of being there, and also you don't realize how deep seated like gender bias can be, where family and friends start perpetuating it too, and you hear
Yeah.
very, very disheartening comments and remarks. I lost everything, Miriam. I lost my career, I lost life opportunities. I was 28 when I ended up on the wheelchair, and I was 34, 35 when I got out of it.
From the point that you came back from England, you couldn't stand, then you went back to Singapore, and then you couldn't stand, so you had to use a wheelchair to kind of move around. Did the doctors at that point tell you what the situation would be?
One doctor that I was with, and I literally was begging him right on the wheelchair, doubled over, crying, and I clasped my hands and I begged him. I said, I really need you to help me help relieve this pain. I can't
Yeah.
take this pain anymore.
Yeah.
And he just, he smiled, he laughed, he said, haha, I played tennis after a long time yesterday, and my elbow is also hurting. That was his response. Um, and I just looked at him and I said, I'm sure your elbow is hurting, but I can't even go to the toilet to empty my bowels. It is that painful. I was on muscle relaxants because I needed some sort of aid to help me empty my bowels. I couldn't go because it was so painful. And I
Yeah.
said, do you don't have trouble on your day-to-day activities? I
Yeah.
do. I
Okay.
can't sit, I can't stand, I can't sleep. I'm doubled over even in my wheelchair. I'm in pain. Please help relieve the pain. That
Yeah.
was his response. I went to another doctor in
Should
a
have
similar.
elbowed him.
Absolutely.
Should have.
And I went to another one, and he
Yeah.
said, "Oh, you should just have sex and get pregnant."
Yeah, and I bet this is one that my doctor used to say. you'll be all right when you get married, because when you have sex, it will just, it will just regulate, then you'll be fine, And
That's a myth. That's a myth.
I'm gonna wait until I get married. Do you know what I mean? I was like that. ugh, I was like, okay,
No,
that was
and
just the that was what I was told all
yes,
the
and
time.
it's very common. And that kind of belittling, disrespectful, dismissive way.
Yeah,
Like, I am in pain, and you're basically telling me to spread my legs and have sex.
yeah,
Excuse me,
yeah.
And that kind of very arrogant, misogynistic behavior from healthcare professionals and doctors. And I faced it. I
Mine
faced
was a
it.
female telling me this.
Yes,
And
like
when
it
I
is
went
that
back again, when
embedded.
I went to her a couple of years later, she said, I told you to get pregnant. I told you to get married. I told you,
Mm.
and I was like, oh, and that hasn't happened, So
Mm,
what do you want me
mm.
to do?
The third thing that I went through, Miriam, is when women like us, particularly with endometriosis, when we complain of pain, we are told we are mad. Literally, we are told that this is all
Drama
up
queens.
here. This
Yeah,
is psychological.
yeah.
The pain
Ew.
doesn't exist at all.
Yeah.
It is all made up in your head, and
Mm,
there's something utterly wrong with you.
yeah.
And do you know, family actually buys into this kind of discourse
Yeah.
because
Because they
according to
can't
them,
handle it. Because,
yeah,
well, they're like, what it interrupts their life.
yeah,
They don't want to hear about anybody nagging about pain
mm,
and,
mm.
stomach pain. They're like,
And
what?
I had that. I had like yourself, I had another female doctor who said, "Oh, this is all psychosomatic. This is all up here." And
Mm,
then family starts believing that too. So when you're actually out in pain, they will say very hurtful things. I was
mm,
told that, "Oh, I'm just being lazy, oh, you're still in bed. Why can't you walk? Get out there and walk. Exercise will cure it all." And I was sitting there flabbergasted that you
yeah.
think I want my life to be like
Yeah.
that? What makes you think that? What makes you think that I want to be in this situation?
Mm,
From a high-flying academic, person who's doing her
yeah.
PhD, what makes you think I want to be in this
Yeah.
situation?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
And
What did you do in that moment in time to pick yourself up or switch your mindset? What did you do to help yourself get out of that situation of a wheelchair into some kind of normality?
to be honest, Miriam, there wasn't any normality. There can't be a normality. I think this is where people need to realize that, normality in itself is a very made up human concept. There's
Yeah,
no normality when a woman is going through something like this.
yeah.
It was just a matter of survival. I was surviving second to second, day to day. That was
Mm.
all I could. And in fact, there's a phenomenon that is known as your brain basically goes in that survival mode, and it
Yes.
will block out everything else. So I had that experience where my brain was focused on one thing. I'm
Mm.
in pain. I need to focus on that pain, and I need to make sure I tide over and survive that pain.
Right.
So I could have had this kind of a conversation with you, but the following day I wouldn't remember it. There were
Right.
so many gaps in my memory that were happening.
Were there
To
gaps because of wanting to forget or because of medication or
I
just
think it's
the
not
pain?
wanting to forget. It's just that your brain at that point is overwhelmed with the fact that it is so painful. It just has to survive, and everything else is blocked out.
Do you speak to your mother about your pain and saying, look, I can't take the pain anymore, like I can't take it? What did she advise you?
That was the hardest bit. I think my mother to this day doesn't really fully grasp the impact it has had on me.
Mm.
When I tell her that, it was actually trauma that I went through, it's almost
Yes.
like I've kind of hit her physically, she recoils as if it's never occurred to her. And when I talk about it, my mother and my brother both tell me that I'm being negative, you know.
Right.
Um, it's not being negative. The problem with our culture is precisely that we don't talk about it. And if
Yes.
we don't talk about it, How is anything going to be, out there so that, women can take strength and learn and advocate for themselves? We
Mm.
need to talk about this. Oh my God, we need to be shouting at the rooftops about
Yes,
this, you know?
exactly.
And this was the hardest bit, Mariam, that I think family is a double-edged sword when it comes to things like this. They supported me a lot, right? In terms of I was on a wheelchair, I needed family around, I
Yes,
need finances, the medications, all of that, right? That's where family helps you, that is what family is, right? That is what you fall back on
absolutely.
when
Yeah,
you are in these times. But
yes,
family can also be very cruel and unforgiving in a lot of the things they do and say, particularly to brown daughters. I think it's also a very gendered thing. And if you confront them, they take a lot of offense. They will be like, "Oh, but we supported you, and you're so ungrateful." That's not the point. The point is that these things shouldn't be said in the first place you
yeah,
know and this is such a difficult area, I think, for people of our culture and backgrounds and religions to traverse.
yes,
Very difficult, and it takes an enormous amount of internal strength, to be able to do that, to be
mm,
able to withstand the kind of, pressures that come with it, the kind
mm.
of sometimes very snide remarks that come from it.
It can not only end careers and create disturbance in family and the relationships there, but it can end marriages and
Mm, mm,
not having children again. It can affect your fertility,
mm,
which is a big part,
mm,
and that's why women have, IVF or resort to IVF as the last resort. And me myself have gone through that, and then having just before IVF, then my doctor saying, okay, he literally said this, I've scraped everything out of you,
mm,
and now you can get pregnant. And I was like, oh, great. And I was in pain for 3 months after
mm,
my op,
mm,
and I didn't get pregnant, but there was a lot of other factors that went along. But if I could have had somebody who could understand and nurture that and be a bit more and understanding but compassionate, because you just need compassion at that time more than anything else. You just want someone to say, okay, all right, I didn't know it was this bad, I didn't know things like this happened. And that affects you. Marriages end, don't have, it's a cycle, and it's a traumatic cycle that happens afterwards. So completely understand where you're coming from. Okay, 1 year passes and you're in the wheelchair. What happens then? Still no diagnosis? I mean, did you get better after a year?
No, no, it just kept getting worse. So I was on crazy drugs, Mariam. I was on fentanyl. I was on morphine. I was on crazy, crazy drugs like gabapentin. Uh, you know,
Were
um,
you even conscious? Were you actually even living?
I I was conscious, but this was the kind of drugs that,
Yeah.
I had to do, and yet the pain wasn't manageable. And it was, I went through like this entire period from 2013 to 2018.
Yeah.
I went through a total of 6 surgeries and nerve blocks, a double J stent in my urethra because my urethra had deposits that were
Right.
constricting it. And the worry was that I wouldn't be able to pass urine. So there was a stent in my urethra.
Okay.
And ultimately, a seventh surgery with a total hysterectomy.
Was that after how many years of being in the wheelchair?
That was during my 4th year, and I had to take a decision because at that point, my University of Warwick, had actually kind of said that I had reached maximum, extensions, and by
Right.
university policy, I can't apply for, further extensions. So either I finish the PhD, or, my candidature would basically be revoked and I'll have to start everything all over again.
Yeah.
And I was already planning to go for the total hysterectomy. And the problem with that was that it would have taken a very long time to recover. So if
Recover.
I'd had, yeah, so if I'd had that, that means that I would have gone past the submission date for the PhD. And, so very counterintuitively, I sat down with like everyone, my doctors, my family, my PhD supervisor, and my supervisor especially. I think hats off to her. She was the one who said, Gurpreet, I know you can do it. It's just a matter of being able to do it. She said, I don't care how, I don't care why, you finish your PhD. And Mariam,
You need that. You need
you
that
do.
one person to cheer you on and
Yes,
just believe in you, right?
yes,
You need that one
yes.
person to give you that push to say, you know what, you can do this.
Yes. And in a very strange way, it became my lifeline at that point in time
Yes.
because I think it gave me something
Some vision,
external. Yes.
something to look
A
forward to.
goal, right? An
Yeah,
aim, a
absolutely.
goal
Yeah, yeah.
externally that allowed me not to focus on my own condition, my pain, and something that I could aim
Yeah,
towards. The
absolutely.
challenge was I couldn't sit down, I couldn't lie down. How was I going to research and write? Right? So that was I had to contort myself in all sorts of ways, and I even burnt my back at one point where I put a hot water bottle in the faintest of faint hopes that it'll help kind of, calm the pain down, but no. And because the pain was so much, I couldn't feel the heat even,
Right.
yeah, and I just burnt my back. And
Describe a day in the life of Gurpreet. Like, what did you do in the morning when you woke up and until the end, till you
I used
slept?
to wake up with dread because waking up would mean facing the pain. And the mornings used to be a little better because your body would be rested. But as the day went on, the pain would become worse and
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
And I, of course, couldn't walk, so I was in a room, and on the ground floor of the house, in my parents' room, basically, because when the pain became more unbearable, I had to be given injections like muscle relaxants, pain relievers, fentanyl patches, all of that, right?
Right.
And because the drugs were so strong, I would actually feel very tired, you know,
Yes.
from getting the pain, but also fighting the effects of the drugs.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I would mostly be reclined on the bed. So I had a mound of pillows, on my lower back to kind of put me in that position. And I had
Yeah.
a makeshift table that I was using on the bed to kind of do my research and writing at the time. And my meals were actually had to be brought to me. And that's the kind of
Did you
thing that
document any of
happens.
this? Did you and
At that time, I wasn't in a state
sense? Yeah.
to, and I
Yeah.
think nobody else had the inclination to.
Yeah.
And I wish I had. I really
Would have
wish I
been
had.
such a powerful documentary.
I really wish. And I think,
You can still get someone to make it.
yeah, I really, really wish. I know a lot of other survivors who have done it, and I
Right.
really wish I had, but
Oh, really?
I was in no state to, and I think my family was not really inclined to either.
Yeah. At that moment in time, did you not find like a community? Did you not search for a group that would be supportive or somewhere you could lean on with other women who were sufferers as well?
That's what I was getting at, Miriam, that when we say that in our culture, this is complicated, not just by cultural baggage, but also religion, this is the gap that you end up finding.
Tell
No,
anybody that they're suffering from it because the implications are so severe because it affects their future partners, their marriage, their family status, their honor,
yes,
respect,
yes.
right? All of that.
Face,
All of that.
honor, what will people
Mm,
say? Keep
yeah, yeah.
quiet. This will affect your prospects for marriage. How are
Marriage.
you going to
Yeah,
bear a child? Your husband can never know about this.
yeah.
No, it affects your sex life. Sex life. We don't talk about sex. Brown people don't talk
Can't even talk
about
about
sex.
that. No, of course not.
No,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
And do we talk about it to parents? No. Oh my God, that is so shameful. That is
Yeah.
so disrespectful. So what happens?
There's no
No,
outlet, is there? There's
no,
no outlet where
no.
you can talk in a safe, not judgmental
Judgmental.
environment, where you can just sit and just say, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's going on with me. Because we're from that generation that doesn't talk. It sweeps everything underneath the carpet until it turns
Yes.
into a volcano, and then you
Yes.
can't hide it, you
No,
know?
no. And that's the other thing, Mariam, like, even though there are like, there's this advice that exists online or there are
Yeah,
communities online, what I found was they don't address a brown woman's very particularized experience, right? Whatever I was reading was a very abstracted, white perspective of what it means to have endometriosis.
right.
And they will give you
Because again,
diet.
the research is only done on probably white
Exactly. Yeah, that and
counterparts.
and the way you experience it is very different. The second thing that happens is what I found online is a lot of the advice is skewed towards infertility. Nobody talks about the pain. And pain is such a fundamental part of this experience and how debilitating and life destroying it is. I couldn't find like there were personal blogs where women had written about we are going through this level of pain, but it's just a blog. I don't have any kind of outlet where I can tap onto that tells me this is what you do, these are the steps you take, this is the advice I would give you to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
Nothing existed out there for me. Now it does. In 2023, there's a lot more awareness, a lot more
Like it's
women.
a decade on
It's
from when you
yes,
were diagnosed, right?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And at that time, no. And the other thing that I found that, within even like a lot of the like online advice is there is a lot of stigma where hysterectomy is concerned, right?
Mm.
And particularly within our brown
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah.
I had to fight for my own hysterectomy tooth and nail with my family. My whole family was against it. Whole family. And
Yeah.
the biggest championer
So
of
what were
not
you meant to suffer in pain but not have it come?
exactly. That's what I said to my family. I said, so it's acceptable for you to see me in this condition and be like this in pain for the rest of my life, but not have a hysterectomy? Like, please make it make sense. I don't understand you know and my brother was the most vocal out of this whole no, you're not going to have a hysterectomy, and this is my body, I decide. and
Yeah.
and, and if I'm telling you I'm in pain, believe me.
Yeah.
And this is the fundamental crux of this issue, Mariam, that
Yeah.
as this is such a gender biased thing that
Mm.
as women, we are not seen to be reliable narrators of our own pain,
Yes.
reliable witnesses of our own bodies and what we are going through.
Mm.
When we say something, oh no, I'm sure it's not that bad. It can't be that bad. Oh,
Yeah.
no, no, I don't. You are just making all of this up in your
Yeah.
head. And
Because
and my
until
my
somebody,
mother's classic phrase, sorry, is
yeah,
you don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, like you don't know yourself.
Mm, mm,
It's your
yeah,
lived reality. It's your
yeah, yeah.
experience. And only you can know the extent of it because she's never known that pain. How
Exactly,
would she relate
Miriam.
to it, you know?
And I think it's very fear-based, right? I think
Yeah.
they like and sometimes I think born out of helplessness also. It
Yeah.
can't have been easy for her to see her own child suffer like this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes that frustration and helplessness, I think, comes out in very, very,
It comes out,
very
yeah, in different mediums, don't they?
yes.
They don't know how to express,
Yeah.
and so it might be viewed in an uh, unflavored opinion,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, and I think again it's that generation has not been able to communicate They don't understand who they are. They don't fully understand and take ownership of who they are, what they want to do in the world. And so they're kind of living somebody else's dream, or they're living, or living up to something else for family status and respect. And so amongst all of that, you forget who you are
Mm.
and why
Mm.
you're on this earth. And you also have a purpose to be here and to live a beautiful, happy, pain-free life,
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
yourself. What does one do when they have such extreme pain and they can't get out of bed? They don't see a future for themselves. What did you do so we can help other women or other somebody else who is in pain, and inspire them? What did you do?
Miriam, I'm about to say something that may not resonate with everybody,
Yeah,
right? But this is what worked for me, and I'm going to tell you that. Different people take solace in different things. They find strength in different things. Some
yeah,
people find strength in religion. Some
yeah,
people find strength in prayer. Some
yeah,
people find strength in various other things, right? I didn't find strength in any of this. In fact, at the point that I was in, I felt that all of this had failed. I had been a very good daughter. I had been a very good, woman. I had done everything by the book,
mm,
everything that religion said, everything that Sikhism said, everything
yeah,
that my family said, everything that, was expected of me. I did it. I, did not go out partying late. I did
yeah,
not have any boyfriends. I was not doing what is called as, just wasting her life away.
yeah. Dutiful
I
daughter. You
did
made that
daughter.
dutiful
I
daughter.
I did everything that
Yeah,
was expected of me. My
yeah,
mom and dad really wanted me to see me on the path of a PhD. I even did that, and yet this is where I was with nothing to show for it, right? And Mariam, at that point, the only person that I could find strength in was me.
mm,
I had no one else was understanding me. No one else was trying to understand what I was going through.
yeah,
Everyone, and I think it's a human tendency, right? Everyone tries to give advice. You should do this, you should do that. You are not doing this correctly. I was facing that with doctors, I was facing that with family, Ultimately, I had to rely on me.
yeah,
That no one else I no, I couldn't depend on anyone else to get me out of that wheelchair. Like I said, the point of realization that came so strongly at me was when I said I need to go for that hysterectomy. I was met with so much resistance,
mm,
and I tell my mother this. She doesn't like it, but I tell her that had I left it up to you and God, I would still be on that wheelchair today. I
yes,
wouldn't have gotten out of it.
yes.
And
What were
you are
what were the thoughts? How did you come to the conclusion of having the operation? Like what is it that you
Mariam,
decided?
it was a very, very strong, again, I had to dig deep within me, it was an
Because
option
it's not an
that,
easy decision
not an easy
either.
decision, but
And so one of the most probably hardest decisions of your life,
actually, it
how,
was a very easy decision for me. I needed to be pain-free and I needed to get back on my feet. And if this allowed that, I was going to go ahead and do that.
yeah,
And the other thing that I want to say with regards to this is, particularly in our culture, right, the brown
yeah,
culture, the worth of a woman is attached to her uterus.
yeah.
And if
We're
you don't,
reproductive, we're just there to
yes,
make babies. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
exactly, right? And this was where I think a lot of the discourse was coming from. And I had to put everyone straight that it may be that way for you, but it's not that way for me. For
Yeah,
me, I'm very clear. I need quality of life and well-being. That cannot happen if, this is the state I am in. I need to get out of that wheelchair. I am in my mid 30s. I need to work. I need a job. I have
mm,
to be financially independent. I cannot be like this for the rest of my life.
yeah,
End of,
yeah,
end of. And if one of the options was hysterectomy, I am going to take it. Full stop.
After 4 years of being in a wheelchair,
Yes.
I
What
think
else
anybody,
can
I
happen?
think that extreme pain for 4 years and overdosing on drugs and the life that you had, I mean that comes to an easy decision then.
Very easy. What else can happen?
Yeah,
What is the worst? It can't get any worse. It is all. I was already at my lowest
exactly.
point.
Yeah,
You know what? And everyone was, oh, there are side effects. I mean, you're telling me, yes, there are side effects, but are they going to be any worse than the state that I was in already? No,
yeah,
no, you
yeah.
know. So for me, and I think this is one of the things we really need to talk about when we talk about, like endometriosis, adenomyosis, that, it's not a bad thing to want a hysterectomy if it gives you your life back, if
Yeah,
it gives you some sort of quality of life and well-being, if
yeah,
it enables you to get back on your feet and chart, start charting your life again, etc. It's not a bad thing.
yeah.
Stop
I had a
making
friend of
it a bad
mine
thing,
who had uh, ovarian cancer and had to have the procedure done, and she said, well, it was my life, or thinking that, do I want to stay alive or do I want to think about family and kids and
Mm,
whatnot? And it's
mm,
the same predicament,
mm.
and it's very saddening. It's very saddening that you would even have to even consider, even think twice, which one will you do.
What do you do?
How are you feeling now after having the operation, and years later? Are there any side effects? Do you feel, what do you feel?
Honestly, I feel very good that I'm back on my feet. I
Mm.
feel that I've had a second chance many don't get to turn
Yeah,
their life around. And this second chance, I'm in the driving seat. I don't want to dance to the tune of anyone else. This second chance is for me to do what I want to do, the way things fit in my life and my values. Not easy, like I said, practically this is very difficult because it means like job rejections. It means people not understanding why you've had such a long gap. It means people not wanting to hire you. It means taking very risky and uncertain decisions that, family doesn't want you to take. And family doesn't want you doing all of these things, right? They, as immigrants, Mariam, they
yeah,
have had their own share of
yeah,
I think uncertainties. And for them, stability and certainty is very valuable. And I
yes,
think when they see, particularly their girl child, doing something that is so alien to their notions of safety and security and certainty and stability, they freak out.
yes,
My mother is freaking out. She's freaking out bad, but there's no choice for me.
yeah,
I cannot go back to something that I can't. I have to chart this life and journey
yeah,
in the ways that I feel I need to do it now. And I can only understand where she's coming from. I
mm,
can, just tell her that, it's okay, but
yeah.
I cannot control her reactions anymore after this.
How has it impacted your personal life? As in, when somebody hears your story or you meet somebody, uh, how is their reaction? And I'm talking about particularly our South Asian male.
To be honest, I've not had very, they look at me like I'm some incredulous, being with two heads, and they don't know what to do with me. They don't know what to make of me. So, but I think the younger generation
Yeah.
is a little different. When
Yes,
I speak to
definitely. Yeah.
Indian men in their 20s, their reaction is actually a little different. They are like, oh, this is actually very admirable. Sometimes I, as a son, can't go against my family, and what you have done, that
Yeah.
speaks like, that is very admirable.
Yeah.
So it is the younger generation, I feel, that is slowly starting to
Because they
shift the
don't want to make
dial.
compromises. They don't want to
Hmm,
compromise and compromise their choices.
hmm.
They have choices. They are educated. They're aware. And awareness creates much more opportunities, doesn't it?
It
It's
does.
life is to be lived, and marriage is part of life. It is not marriage is life, everything, right? And I think they now understood that many people who have had marriages are not all happy. They've made major compromises in how to live their life, and so this new generation does not want to compromise.
Absolutely, Miriam.
And not
And
having children is not the be all and end all of life. You can adopt it other ways and means. You can spread love. It's this, you still have that motherly feeling. It doesn't mean that you can't share that with your nieces, your relatives, your friends' kids. You can be mentors to them. You can adopt. How many children are there in the world that could use a loving home?
exactly, Miriam. And also, I think we have to bear in mind that not everyone wants to be pet.
Not every woman
No,
wants children.
no,
That's a
I
big
never
thing.
did. And like you, I'm of the belief that at some point in my life when I am, able to, I would really like to either adopt or sponsor, a couple of children, particularly girls who are, who don't have the opportunity to study, etc. And there's so many out there who need
You can
those
help
opportunities.
many people that you can help so many
Exactly.
ways. I mean, I always wanted children. It was a very painful journey for me, but you have to accept that these things happen. It is reality. And consequently my marriage broke up because of so many other things, but because I was in so much excruciating pain,
Mm,
and my husband was not, he was oblivious to it, like he oblivious, and he literally closed himself off.
mm,
I would have a pain, and it was like, oh God, no, here you go again. Like it
mm,
was
mm,
like, oh God, here she goes again.
mm,
Listen
mm.
to this. And so that was quite traumatic for me, but I have accepted the fact that I have so much to offer. Women have so much to offer besides just having children. There's so
Absolutely.
much women can do. If not having children, and it's not your decision, this is not that you decided, this is, again, I always think it's something beyond your control. This is not something that you had decided. So
Absolutely,
why
Mary.
should you be blamed or feel guilty about it at all?
And this also feeds back into what I was saying, right? The bias and discourse that surrounds these issues.
Yes.
It's also a reflection on how men are brought up,
Yes,
right? They are brought up
absolutely.
in these biases and discourses that are fed to them from generations and generations and generations, and this whole thing has to change.
Yeah.
The
I,
the
I
dis
you're absolutely right in that sense. And I feel that it is how you are bringing up the next generation and what you're informing them of. I have a friend of mine, and she's going through menopause for the last few years, and she has educated her husband and her three boys about menopause.
Hmm,
She rants and raves on about it. She goes, this is what's happening to me. I'm getting like this. I've got to do this. This is how I'm feeling. I have to tell you how I'm feeling. I don't want to cook today. I'm not going to do
hmm,
anything. I'm going
hmm,
to lie in my bed. I'm going to take some time out. Don't talk to me. I'm having my own time. And she has educated her children. She's educated her husband, even though husband doesn't agree with half the things that she doesn't understand. But he's going to accept her because she's quite a power woman.
hmm.
And so and I feel that they are now equipped for then when they get married, when they have their own families, the understanding of a woman and what she goes through and what how are we going to move forward in this for the next generation? And what are you doing on your journey to kind of spread awareness?
I think for the next generation, we have to be very intentional about the fact that a woman's uterus is not a bad thing, you know, a period is not a bad word, you
Yeah.
know, women's health conditions are as, you know, important as men's health conditions. They need to be given the same importance, the same research, the same funding, which is not coming in. You know, and when a woman complains of something, she needs to be heard and needs to be taken seriously.
Yes.
Intentional is the word. Everyone has to be very intentional about these things. In families, at workplaces, outside of workplaces, in friend circles, intentionality is very important. This
Okay.
is what we need for the next generation to start hearing, right? That periods is not a bad word,
Yeah,
honestly.
exactly. Exactly. We really have to start using this in our everyday language,
Language, yes,
right? I think
absolutely.
making it part of our vocabulary every single day and not shying from it.
No, why should we shy from it, right? It's a very natural function that a woman's body has. Why
Yeah.
have we loaded, you know, onto it this shame and guilt, etc.? Why? Where? Where does it come from?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's a very
Exactly.
patriarchal, misogynistic thinking again, which needs to go.
Right. What have you learned from all of the 5 years or this whole experience of having endometriosis? What have you learned about yourself?
That no one can fight your battles for you. You have to fight them yourself. Therefore, don't let anyone who hasn't walked a mile in your shoes give you advice that you don't think is useful.
Mm.
That has been such an important lesson for me. That, you know, oh, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. But you're the one who's on the ground. You are the one who's fighting your battles. You know your battlefield more than anyone else around you.
Yes.
Therefore, it is very important to believe in yourself. These were mere words for me until I had to actually put that into practice.
How did you practice self-belief?
I
I think.
advocated for myself. I advocated for my hysterectomy.
What did you? Okay, so you vocalized
I
that.
vocalized it. I stood my ground. You have to have that, right? It's, I think, second nature for South Asian women to start second guessing yourself the moment your family gives you opposition, the moment your brother says something, the moment your father or mother says something, the moment your uncles and cousins say something, right? And that is it. You're like, oh, everyone else is right. I
Yes.
am wrong.
Yes.
You never once stop to think, how about I am right because I know what I'm going through? I
Mm.
think this is the biggest lesson I had to learn, that I know what I am saying. I know what I am doing. It may not be comfortable for you, but I cannot control your reactions, unfortunately. You know, what you do, what you say is on you, but I have to do what I need to do. And the confidence comes from fighting these battles.
Yes. So you've become much more of a confident person
Much more, much more.
to
I
then,
think much, much more.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like a bit of a gift for you. It's a gift in a way that you've started to kind of really own your own life.
Yes. Yes. In
Yeah.
in the face of still a lot of a lot of misgivings, but yes, you know, it is. And I think this is something very important to keep in mind, because at the end of the day, Mariam, you know, everyone is going to die, right? That is the
Yes.
biggest reality.
Yes.
Yeah, and I lost my father 2 years ago. But
I'm
my
so-
father said something very profound on his deathbed that he gifted to me. He didn't gift it to anybody else. And I would like to say this on this
Yeah.
podcast today. He held my hand and he said, life is not about, and then he trailed off. I think he was trying to gather his thoughts. And then
Mm-hmm.
he said, it is also about feelings.
Mm.
Life is about purpose, right? At the end of the day, our older, people in the family are going to die at some point, and we are going to be at that point where, having listened to them, having lived their lives and expectations, they are going to go, but
Mm.
where are we going to be? Right?
Exactly.
This is something I've had to ask myself day in and day out ever since my dad passed away. He's gone. He's not here anymore, you
Yeah.
know? And for me to take his advice, and to put it into practice is living that life of purpose. What is
Yes.
my purpose? And I have to move in that direction.
Absolutely. And it's and we need to break away from, firstly, thank you so much. That was beautiful. And I'm so happy that you shared that with us and with the rest of the audience. But I do feel that fathers have a beautiful relationship with daughters,
They do.
where mothers, you'd think that we're both female, that they would have that compatibility, but there's something that my father made me brave, and he made me wise, and he trained me before he, I feel like he gave me a lot of words of wisdom before he passed away as well. And it is that strength that I carry in everyday life, so
Same
I
here,
think.
Miriam. Yeah, I wouldn't be here without my father.
Yes.
My father's, strength, his support, his wisdom, his calmness, his love, his absolute unconditional
Yeah.
love, and that is what I carry. And this journey that I've embarked on is in his honor, his
Mm.
whatever, values that he imparted to me, it's in honor of that. Yeah.
Absolutely, we have to honor and continue honoring them.
Honoring. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's end on a really positive note, because when you told me, you've actually recently done a TED Talk. Congratulations. And that's
Thank
out
you.
next year. So looking forward to that. But tell us about your TED Talk, and what was the theme? What did you talk about?
My TED Talk is on the theme of endometriosis and taking women seriously. I talk about the history of medicine, how medicine is historically been very gender discriminative and misogyny that is, there, and how doctors actually bring all of that into their practice. And we need gender responsive approaches to endometriosis and women's health conditions more broadly. And the three things that I outlined in my talk was conscious and unconscious bias training for doctors,
Right.
um, more research and funding that needs to go, in women's health conditions, particularly endometriosis.
Right.
It's not a secret even within like the, healthcare professionals and the medical fraternity that women's conditions attract far less research funding,
Yes.
than all others. And
Mhm.
the third thing that I said is that when we teach medicine, medicine needs to be taught with its own history and biases in mind. The way medicine was practiced has very, very colonial and very, very gender discriminatory, ways within it. And
Mm.
up to a point, women weren't even allowed to be doctors legally. It was
Yeah.
illegal. All of this carries into the way medicine is practiced. And how medicine is being taught right now is, okay, this is the human body, you dissect it and you learn. It doesn't come with any of the social and the milieu that it was founded in. And if doctors actually learn medicine with the historical and cultural biases that informed it, it would actually affect how they communicate with patients, and there would be a lot more care and respect for women. That is my TED Talk.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. What message would you like to leave women who have endometriosis, or are suffering from endometriosis, or women who are just suffering from pain? what is a message that you'd like to leave our audience with?
I will tell you what I said in my TED talk, the last line, because
Sure.
that for me is the main message to all my endo sisters, all women who are suffering from whether it's endometriosis or pain or menopause or fibroids or infertility, ectopic pregnancies, anything to do with your reproductive system, and you're being dismissed. Speak your truth. There is no bigger reality and no bigger way to advocate for yourself than speaking your truth. Speak it
Yeah.
once, speak it twice, speak it 5 times, speak it 10, 20, 50, 100, speak it 1,000, but speak. No one should
Loud.
be
Speak it loud.
speak it loud. No one should be able to silence you just because they are uncomfortable, just because your truth is inconvenient to them, just because they want to dismiss you, just because they think, oh, I am the man of the family, I am this, I am that. No, speak your truth. Just speak it, because the only way you're going to get through this ordeal is by advocating for yourself. No one is going to do it for you. And by virtue of the fact that we are born female, no one is going to do it for you.
Yes.
You got to do it for yourself. So speak it loud, speak it proud. And anyone comes at you like my brother is very fond of saying, oh, you're just being negative, you've got so much pent up in you, you're just so negative. That's your point of view, man. I'm going to speak my truth, and this
Yes.
is my truth. I'm honored to be here telling my story to you, to all your listeners. And even if one person out there feels that, they have taken strength and inspiration, I would feel my job is done. Because the reason I set out to give the TED talk was because so many women out there are suffering in silence and don't know what to do. So if this has given some sort of, outlet for them, or some inspiration, or some way to deal with what they're going through, then that is half my battle won.
And
Very
Gurpreet,
fantastic.
because I feel that you're such an advocate for endometriosis, have you got a group yourself? Do you have any
I don't have
community?
a group. One of the
Can you please start
reasons
that, please? Because I think it's very much needed, and you need to start your own podcast, which I've already told you to do. But
will
I think you
do.
should definitely have your own community. And there's so many of us and so many people that I know that would just value from you so much.
Let's
I think
get
you should
together
start
with
it. Can I
with
instigate that? Can
yeah,
I
let's
instigate
get
that
together
initiative?
and start this.
Yes.
But I am also, Miriam, one of the things I do is, if anyone actually needs help in strategies in talking to their family, their doctors, this is something that I've done with other survivors. How do we
So how do you
come?
approach
How do you approach?
the matter
Yes,
with a family member?
with a
How do
family
you
member,
subject and
or
get
with,
the best results and
yes,
diagnosis, treatment from your
yes,
doctor?
yes, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing a community for endometriosis survivors and help, with women in this subject. It's so much needed, Gurpreet. You need to do this.
Will do, Miriam. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.